Trevor, the stage is yours.
Hi, and thank you everyone for joining. And I would like to give a special thank you to all the organizers of this year's XDC. I would imagine that planning a conference during normal circumstances would be exciting enough, but having to throw all that out and redo it halfway through was just phenomenal. I think they're doing a great job, and that's amazing. And thank you for accepting my talk as well. Today I'd like to talk about GSoC and EVoC, and specifically the X.Org's participation in that. My name is Trevor Warner, and I have been the admin for X.Org's GSoC for the last 2 years. And prior to that, I also was a mentor for BeagleBoard's GSoC program. So I've done this a couple times, and so far I just want to give updates and make everyone aware of it. This is great, having the live audience, but also having this recorded and on YouTube, I hope will serve as a great resource for students in the future and mentors and stuff for people interested in what's going on with this program. This is not going to be a technical talk, so hopefully a bit of a break from all the amazing technical deep stuff that we've been doing so far today. But anyway, good time to check your email and whatnot, and just sort of go along for the ride. So what is GSoC? GSoC is a program that was started by Google in 2005. It's a program that is focused on bringing more student developers into open source software. I don't want to open a whole can of worms right now, but as we know, the kernel community, for example, is going through a lot of discussions right now on onboarding and the gap that exists between what a developer needs to know to be a developer and what a person would need to know in order to contribute to an open source project. And in my opinion, for example, universities and colleges do a good job of preparing developers, but there's always going to be a bit of a gap. Even a seasoned developer who's not worked with open source very much might find that a bit of a challenge. That there's things to learn in order to be a contributor to open source. And so this is a program that was started by Google. And what it is essentially is that open source organizations are allowed to post jobs, essentially. Students apply for and work on those jobs, and then Google pays them to do that. The program is a little bit North American. It's sort of geared more towards North American schedules. Students are in school from September and then write exams in December, and then from January till May or so. And then they're off for the latter part of May, and then June, July, and August. And they usually seek employment at that time, try to make a little bit of money in preparation for the next semester. And this gives them an opportunity to do something that would be very, very relevant. It also provides the open source community with people and opportunities to try and bring in more people into open source. Not everyone is fortunate enough to have professors that might be aware of open source and might be able to teach them about that. And so if they can find these opportunities, then hopefully we get excellent contributions to our projects, but also hopefully we get an open source developer for life, preferably. That's the ultimate goal. There's a website there that I've listed on my slides, and you can check that out. There's lots of information. You probably have lots of questions about who's eligible and what organizations and how to mentor and stuff like that. There's lots of FAQs on the site that will go through all that, and videos and documentation. And there's also a lot of stats too, which are pretty interesting. For example, GSoC 2020, this one that we just finished, there were over 50,000 students that had registered for GSoC to be part of this GSoC program. Of those, 6,600 actually submitted proposals, and there were 9,000 proposals that were submitted. Students are allowed to submit more than one proposal, for example. And of those 9,000 proposals that were submitted by 6,600 students, only about 1,200 were accepted. So it's a lot of work organizing all that, and Google does a fantastic job. It's not a huge subgroup within Google that manages that. And there were about 200 organizations that participated. Every year, the number of organizations is about 200, and we were fortunate enough, X.Org that is, to have been one of those that were selected. So how it works, just digging in a little more under the covers a bit. The assumption is that you are a project that produces code, and that code has to be an open source or free software as per Google's definition of that. And the other thing too to get across is that this is Google Summer of Code. There's a coding component to this. It's expected that you're writing code for this. It can't be just, the contribution can't just be documentation. A couple years ago, Google started a season of docs to address documentation. So there is a separate program for documentation, but GSoC is a coding. We're looking to bring developers into the open source project. So the assumption is that you are an open source organization and that you have code that's released under a free or open source license. And around the January, February timeframe each year, organizations apply. I believe 600 applied this year, roughly. Anyway, so around January, February, the administrator, which would be, in my case, me, would apply, fill out the forms and whatnot to apply. And then around the end of February, Google announces the list of selected organizations. And then at that point, students start submitting their proposals. And students are free to come up with their own proposals if they wish, but they can also, every organization must have sort of a website where they list out proposals, suggested projects, which students can either apply directly for those, or that can be used as a springboard for their ideas if they want to have their own ideas of what to apply to. And then organizations then, the administrators and the mentors get together, go through all the proposals, and select those that they like. And that happens around the April timeframe. And then once that is done, then the organizations will then ask Google for slots, to be allocated slots. You'll say, we have these many great proposals. These ones are really strong. And so could we please have this number of slots? And then Google gets back to us and says, here are the number of slots you get. And they don't admit, I've never seen anywhere where they explain the correlation between how many you ask for and how many you get. If it's your first year as an organization participating, then I think the maximum you're allowed is 2. X.Org in the past has had up to 6, I think. But anyway, like I said, there were 1,200 proposals accepted this year for 200 organizations. So Google works through that and then gives you your slots. And then when you have your slots, then you then have to, if you didn't get all the slots you wanted, then the mentors and admins then have to go through and try and figure out which of the proposals they're going to then take. And then you offer that to the student. And as I said before, students can apply to more than one, or there could be many reasons why they might not accept your proposal, your slot. And the challenging part about that is if you have an unused slot, it can't be reused. You can't give it back to Google, unfortunately. And the belief is that there are penalties if you end up with unused slots. So it's a bit tricky. It's a bit of an anxious thing to try and figure out, get the slots right, hope the students accept, all that sort of thing. But anyway, it's part of the process. So that happens around April-ish or so. In May, there's a community bonding period. And it's an important time for students to get used to your organization. In our case, to get on IRC, to start interacting with the community, to start looking at the code from a high level, to start getting to know your mentor, to start doing meetings with them, and sort of maybe do a blog post or something. And then in June, July, and August, that's where the coding is. There are usually 3 coding/evaluation sprints that occur in that time. And the mentor, so they'll code for 3 weeks, and then there's an evaluation period. The mentor evaluates the student, of course, and Google supplies the form, so you fill out the form. But the student also evaluates the org/mentor as well. So it's sort of a back and forth. And then at the end, around the start of September, by the time September rolls around, it's time for final evaluations. And then by the end of September, the results are announced. So organizations. So what do we do? So an organization needs an administrator, at least one, more than one preferably, and mentors. And I cannot stress this enough, the mentors are the cornerstone of GSoC. If there are no mentors, there's simply no GSoC. If we didn't have mentors, we wouldn't be able to participate. I don't have the technical chops in the projects that fall under the XOrg/free desktop umbrella. To really be mentoring someone on the technical details. And so it really needs people involved in these. And the thing that I want to stress to the students, for example, at this point, is all the admins and mentors of all this project are volunteers. Google pays a stipend to the students, but the mentors and the admins don't receive anything for their time. And obviously, it's non-trivial to be helping someone work on a project and to be coordinating with an open source community. There's certainly commitments involved in that, time commitments, and a lot of work involved for them. And I can't thank them enough. It's absolutely phenomenal. So as I said, as part of the submission process that we do to Google, we have to provide a website that has our ideas. And Google's very explicit about this. You can't just simply point to a bug tracker and say, search for these bugs. You can't just simply tag bugs in your bug tracker and say, these are good GSoC projects. They want you to actually work on this, to actually have dedicated some thought and time to this. And so we do. This is the link here where we can go and look at the current summer of code ideas. And to the XOrg developers in the room, I would like to point out that this website could use a lot of work. There are a lot of older stuff, and I'm not sure if it could be cleaned up. If you are working in some subsystem and think you have sort of a side project that you don't have time for, but might make a really good 3-month project for a student, then certainly that would be fantastic if you would propose that. Ideally, it would be great if you would propose it and then volunteer to mentor for it. I mean, if you say that you're going to mentor for something, I'm not going to hold you to it. If things happen, if when next year's GSoC occurs, there are reasons that you're under time pressures and really can't, that's fine. So you can propose ideas and not volunteer to mentor for it, but it would certainly be great if you could do both. If you don't want to set up an account on that system, on the wiki system, just to edit the page, then just shoot me an email or ping me on IRC, and I'd be happy to look at the thing. So maybe when you're flying home from your virtual conference and you're stuck in your virtual 2-hour layover, if you could spend a minute or two just looking through that list and giving your thoughts, that would be really fantastic and really appreciate it. And it would be great to do that ongoing instead of me waiting till January and then sort of panicking and spamming all the email lists with, hey, please look at the list and help. So when you have a free moment, if you could look at that list, that would be fantastic. And so now a little bit for the students. for the students who want to apply to any of the projects on X.Org, you have to find a project, but more importantly, you have to find a mentor. There are a lot of students that kind of show up in our mailing list or IRC and say, hey, here I am, give me a project, and where's my mentor? And that's not the way that GSoC kind of works. We want to see students hitting the ground and and going on IRC, being part of the community, looking for projects, and just involving themselves. Really a lot of get up and go type thing. In order for us to consider your proposal, we absolutely want to see you having already submitted at least one patch for review on any project. And it doesn't have to, it can be trivial, it can be a spelling change or something, or a formatting change. It doesn't even have to be accepted. Even, if you post it and no, we're not going to accept it, that's fine. We just don't want to be using up the GSoC time, the coding time, seeing if you have, if you know how to submit a patch, how to use Git and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, there's a contributing guide for students if you want to look at that. I myself, when proposals come in, I want to see a very concise proposal with detailed timelines and concrete deliverables. We get a lot of wishy-washy proposals that are sort of like, oh, I'll read the docs and maybe I'll see what needs to be done. I really want to see concrete, and I want to see week by week for the 3 months what you plan on doing. If you are accepted, you must be available for regular meetings. Time zones aside, we have to figure out, I personally want to see 2 meetings, meet with the students, whether it's on IRC or through some sort of online platform. It doesn't have to be video. I mean, it could be a video platform, but we just connect through audio, but I do want sort of to connect with you regularly. And we like to see blogs. We have a Planet, and which is a blog aggregator, and it would be nice to see students blogging about their progress and what they're working on. So statistics, how are things been going? So here's a chart that shows our participation over the last number of years. And 2005 and 2012, we weren't participating in GSoC, but you can see the orangey bars are the number of accepted proposals that we had, and then how many of those succeeded. So it comes and goes. And so I have a spreadsheet that shows all of the students, stuff like that. And the total number of students over all the time that we've been doing this that we've ever had was 53. And of those, 43 have succeeded in their GSoC efforts, which is around an 81% success rate, which is phenomenal. That's code, that's features, that's stuff that X.Org/free desktop projects have. That is, that's been useful. Now, that's a good measure of success, but how many of those then go on to continue contributing? And by my estimations, about 19 or so of those students, which is about a 44% post-GSoC retention. Now, what I did was I looked at the student and when their GSoC ended, and whether there was any more patches. And in one case, one person contributed a patch like a year after their GSoC ended. So, that's not a huge contribution, but it's still someone stuck around, to continue with the project. And what I don't know how to track is how many students, I mean, just because they might do an XOrg GSoC, maybe they become an open source contributor in another project. So I don't know how to track that. But for our project alone, that's a 44% post-GSoC retention rate, which I think is phenomenal. So I have about a minute left. So now I want to talk about EVoC. EVoC is XOrg's version of GSoC. Sometimes we don't get accepted for GSoC, but sometimes we have a fantastic student that we want to bring in anyway. And so we have a little bit of funding ourselves where we can run an EVoC, which is basically our private version of GSoC. And so we can still do sort of a GSoC-y thing, but without Google's involvement. most of this, it's mostly for cases where we don't get into GSoC and have a great proposal. And it's also a timing issue. So if GSoC's timeline doesn't work great for a student, then we can still bring them in. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be in the QA IRC room. And
Okay, thank you very much. There weren't any questions, but there was acknowledgement that we've got Waypipe thanks to GSoC, and there was a mention that organizations also get $500 for each successful student.
Yes.
And there was acknowledgement that some stuff could definitely be cleaned up. And some people were hoping that we could get some students interested in Nouveau. So that would be nice to have. Yeah, that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you again, and see you around.
All right. Thank you.